The Darlington nurses had argued that their employer had neglected their rights as women to have a protected single-sex space, that the NHS Trust had instead prioritised unfairly the rights of their trans colleague, Rose Henderson. In that, the tribunal found decisively in their favour.
Today, the tribunal has confirmed what we have said from the beginning, that requiring women to undress in front of men is not equality, it is a violation of our dignity. This judgment recognises the intolerable and degrading situations women have been placed in.
In his judgment, the tribunal judge, Seamus Sweeney, said that by requiring the claimants to share a changing room with a biological male trans woman, the Trust engaged in unwanted conduct related to sex and gender reassignment, which had the effect of violating the dignity of the claimants and creating for the claimants a hostile, humiliating and degrading environment. That by not taking seriously and declining to address the claimants' concerns, the Trust's actions had the effect of creating for the claimants a hostile and intimidating environment, and that the complaints of indirect sex discrimination are well-founded and succeed. That last point a reference in part to the fact that the nurses had been told they could find alternative spaces to change in, while Rose Henderson was given no such advice. The tribunal also found that an HR manager's comments on the need for education about trans employees' rights highlighted to the nurses that they weren't being taken seriously, reinforcing a feeling that they were seen as transphobic.
It was never about trans-identifying individuals. That was never the issue. These women were women that were saying men are men, women are women, and we want to be able to change in safe, single-sex spaces.
Some of the nurses said Henderson, seen here in the black and white dress, whom the tribunal heard was sexually active and had a female partner, had behaved in a harassing manner. The tribunal dismissed those claims, and Rose Henderson testified that the nurse's decision to go to the media led to personal and upsetting coverage.
This is a really concerning place that we're getting to when we're really going after individual people at work. And, it's no surprise that groups like Christian Legal Centre with their evangelical outlook are behind this. We're saying that following the Supreme Court judgment, there is a huge lack of clarity about how we can safely include trans people in spaces. And we're calling on the government to fix this mess and introduce legislation that allows trans people to use facilities in line with their gender as they have done so for many, many years.
The Supreme Court ruled in April last year that with relation to the Equality Act, sex was to be defined as biological sex at birth. But how that should be interpreted in a variety of settings has yet to be fully fleshed out. The government's currently considering a draft code of practice. Last month, another nurse, Sandy Peggy, partially won her claim against the Fife Health Board. She too had refused to change in the same facilities as a transgender doctor. Today's ruling adopts the Supreme Court language both for the Equality Act and for workplace regulations, finding County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation Trust in breach of the law. The Trust itself saying it was taking time to review the judgment carefully and would comment further once it had considered it in full.
Harry Fawcett. Well, earlier I spoke to one of the nurses who brought the action, Bethany Hutchison. I started by asking her what led her and her colleagues to launch their claim against the Trust.
Women were feeling very uncomfortable getting undressed in front of a man, which, is absolutely understandable. And we have a lot of, we have women who have suffered sexual abuse and physical abuse at the hands of men, and men should not be allowed in female facilities.
And of course, at the crux of this is that Rose is a nurse who identifies as a woman.
Yes, yeah.
But you felt that it was not acceptable, and that is what the tribunal have judged today.
Yes, absolutely. It's my belief and the other nurses' belief that sex is immutable, that you cannot change sex. And Rose Henderson is a man.
Obviously, you have talked a lot about not wanting to hurt Rose. Rose identifies as a woman, would like to be regarded as a woman, and would find it very hurtful for you to be talking about her as a man.
Yeah, but it's the truth. It is the actual truth. And we have advocated all along for similar facilities to be provided for transgender individuals. We obviously have compassion for transgender individuals, but it's not at the expense of women's rights.
And that's the critical issue here for this tribunal.
Yes, yes.
And in terms of the acceptance that there was a hostile, intimidating environment created for you, give us a sense of what that was like.
We had nurses who were having panic attacks before their shift and didn't want to go and get changed after their shift. I mean, that is extremely hostile and intimidating. We had posters put up on the changing room to say it was inclusive. We were moved into a makeshift changing room that wasn't fire safe. The trust were not willing to spend money on us to make it fire safe. These are all hostile and extremely intimidating things.
I mean, is it your view, it certainly seems to be the tribunal view, that it was in the Trust's effort not to discriminate against Rose, which may be a perfectly valid position, that they ended up discriminating against you?
Yes, that's absolutely what happened. And that the women who felt uncomfortable were put in an unsafe environment. They put us in a converted office with nothing more than a hook on the door and a chair.
And what did you make of that absolute paradox, in a sense, that in attempting not to discriminate against someone else, they ended up discriminating against the rest of you?
Well, it was disgraceful. Like I say, I think there was an easy way to resolve this situation, but they weren't willing to listen, and they backed Rose Henderson.
I mean, as you said, and I've said before, you wanted and say you show compassion for Rose. Going forward, what should organisations do for nurses, for colleagues like Rose?
I think that there should be an alternative facility for colleagues like Rose, and that's what we've advocated for from the beginning. This was not meant to hurt Rose in any way. It was never personal. There was an easy solution to this, and that was providing an alternative facility.
So in terms of going forward, what needs to happen now?
Policy needs to change. These illegal policies need to be removed from all NHS trusts, and we need more input from the government, and urgent input from the government.
And of course, Rose Henderson has spoken about, since this story hit the headlines, having some really unpleasant things written online, some really hurtful things. That's regrettable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's awful. I wouldn't wish that for Rose Henderson at all. That's really, really unpleasant, and I don't associate myself with any of those things. But I would like to say that we have also received some negative things as well.
So really, really important now that clear guidance is given to organisations like yours and others across the country.
Yes, yes.
Bethany Hutchinson, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you. Thanks.